Out with the old and in with the new world order? Prime Minister Mark Carney is getting a lot of attention for his recent speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. He declared that the old international world order is over, and it's mostly been a mirage all along. I'm Nicole Huck, and today on Blue Sky, we're going to talk about this new world order and why that phrase is interpreted very differently by different groups. So what do you make of Carney's analysis of this new state of the world and Canada's place in it? You can call 1-800-716-2221 or you can email bluesky@cbc.ca. Before going to Switzerland for the World Economic Forum, Prime Minister Carney was on a trade tour in Qatar and China. It was all part of building new trade agreements in the wake of strained relationships with the United States. I want to start by playing some tape from a clip that has gained a lot of attention on social media. Now, if you're listening on your radio, picture two long tables. On one side is the president of China and Chinese diplomats. On the other side is the Canadian contingent, with Mark Carney at the center, Scott Moe to his right, and the Economic Development Minister Melanie Joly to his left. The speech is quite long, but this is the part that's getting attention.
Mine is the first visit of a Canadian Prime Minister to China in nearly a decade. The world has changed much since that last visit. And I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order. It's a partnership with new focus and greater depth and a sense of purpose. And I look forward to realizing its promise and building on it in the years to come. A partnership that leverages our strengths to create greater stability, security, sustainability, and prosperity for all our peoples. And I look forward to this working session to advance those objectives.
So in that video, you can see Premier Moe looking slightly surprised by the phrase New World Order. And shortly after that deal was reached, Morning Edition host Adam Hunter spoke with Scott Moe from China. And during that conversation, he actually asked the Premier about the phrase.
Premier, you were seated next to the Prime Minister, and he was making some statements about partnerships between China and Canada, setting the scope for a new world order. You had a bit of a reaction to that. What are your thoughts on the comments made by the Prime Minister?
Well, I certainly wouldn't have used that phrase for a number of reasons. There's many people that will interpret that in a different way. But I would say when you look at the trade relations that many countries, ours included, have had and have oftentimes felt would be pretty certain into the future, that's just not the case today. You see the ever-changing trade relationship that we have with not only the United States but with other countries around the world, just rectifying some of the challenges that we had with China as recently as the last few hours. It certainly is a different environment, in particular from a trade perspective, but I would say also from the perspective of various topics with countries all around the world. So, the certainty that used to be the case for at least Canada's relationship with so many countries around the world just isn't the case today, and it doesn't appear to be the case tomorrow. In fact, things tend to be more uncertain next week than they were even this week. So it's not a phrase I would have used because I know there's a lot of different interpretations by different individuals as to what that phrase might indicate or mean. However, I think we're living in an increasingly uncertain world with our trade relations, and I'm happy to see the engagement of the Prime Minister in China is at least alleviating some of the challenges that we've seen over the last number of months with significant industry for our province and our nation.
That was Premier Scott Moe speaking with Morning Edition host Adam Hunter on Friday. It seems like a month ago. Now so much has happened between now and then. But if you go and read the comments on Premier Scott Moe's Facebook page, it's filled with comments from people who are concerned about this new world order, that phrase. Now, if you aren't up on your conspiracy theories, Premier Moat there said, it's not a phrase that he would have used because people interpret it differently. If you don't know what he's referring to, we're going to help you out here because we have somebody who knows a lot about, who studies conspiracy theories. We're joined by Carmen Celestini. She's a postdoctoral fellow with Simon Fraser University's Disinformation Project. Carmen, welcome to Blue Sky.
Thank you for having me.
So you've seen that video circulating. Why is this such a big deal in some circles? Some people see it and they're like, nothing to see here, folks. And other people, they see something different. What are those other people seeing?
Well, it's New World Order is a phrase that is used in numerous conspiracy theories, some that are anti-Semitic, some who portray this idea that the elites are going to take over and enslave humanity, even attached to the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset. And using that phrase, there has been attachments to this conspiracy as well with communism, with China. People believe that this is going to be a new world order where the general population of humanity will either be enslaved or captured in some way, like locked in our homes and unable to travel, or that we will, own nothing and be happy about it. And so using the phrase really triggers those individuals who distrust the government, who distrust the institutions of society. And it sort of validates their opinions about what they see sort of for a dystopian future and validates their belief systems in these conspiracies.
I mean, I think a lot of us maybe see a dystopian future right now. They're tricky times. But how long has this New World Order conspiracy theory been circulating?
For hundreds of years.
Okay.
There's this idea with a book with the Protocols of the Elders of Zion that there would be a new world order attached to that. It's a very anti-Semitic concept, but it's attached to numerous conspiracy theories. Most recent, we would see it with ideas with QAnon, and we would see it with the Great Reset, which is this belief that the World Economic Forum that has worked with the Liberal government, including Mark Carney and Justin Trudeau, that they will take over the world, and that if Canada falls, it'll be one of the first countries that fall because of this connection, and that we will all be enslaved and locked into our houses and own nothing in the future.
And we are hearing Prime Minister Mark Carney talk about Canada's new role in the world at the World Economic Forum. And in the first case, in the clip we played, it was in the context of increasing trade relationships with China and decreasing our dependency on the United States. But now, we've heard him speak, laying out his picture for this new world order. Does that help clarify things for people who are leery of the phrase New World Order, or does it just feed the flames?
I believe that it's feeding the flames. If we look at what we're seeing online now with the videos that are being shared and the memes, people who distrust the government and distrust media, legacy media, they just sort of believe that now they're just trying to cover up for saying the quiet part out loud, right? They're not going to suddenly go, oh, CBC is telling us this is true, and that, he's just trying to, deal with the economic and political reality of the world we live in right now. They're just going to use this to validate their beliefs in the distrust of all of the institutions of society. I think this message, it probably was not the best phrase to use, but those who are not conspiratorial can actually understand it. But I think that those who do hold these conspiracy theories are just being validated and really rejoicing in the fact that they are right, because it empowers them and gives them a sense of control about what's happening in the future during this sort of chaotic time.
It's interesting because of algorithms, right? Like if I watch one video of Mark Carney's speech, I'm going to be seeing a ton more of them. And again, if you see one video of somebody being critical of it, you're going to see a bunch more of that as well. How is online and the world of online playing into the spread of this?
Oh, absolutely. My algorithm is definitely not puppies and kittens on social media. It's definitely a lot of conspiracy theories and people who are talking about it. And we're seeing a lot of AI videos with Mark Carney, with the leader of China, with the World Economic Forum behind it. It definitely is spreading this conspiracy theory and being part of this validation of prophecies. Numerous memes, people having conversations about what is happening and what they foresee to happen because of this new world order that is occurring. So online, it is being spread very quickly. And you're right. If you do see a clip of Mark Carney and that speech or him saying it, it does lead you down that path to other people's interpretation of what he was actually saying.
You study disinformation. We know that there are players all over the world right now who are actively spreading disinformation online. What are you keeping your eye on right now?
What I'm looking at now is trying to see how in Canada we have issues with individuals on the far right who are part of Maple MAGA, who want America to make us a 51st state, and using this as validation. We're seeing a lot of far right groups sending out memes attached with Mark Carney and the leader of China together and really pushing that narrative and fear. And that fear mongering can sort of open the envelope for other people to join in on the conversation. If it's individuals who do not particularly support the Liberal Party or Mark Carney as Prime Minister, they could be innocently sharing these memes and some of these clips thinking that it's entertaining, but really what it's sharing is conspiracy theories and distrust and fear-mongering.
What's the harm?
The harm is that people start believing that these things are true, and they lose sort of the grasp of the reality of what is happening as the world is shifting politically right now. And they focus on this idea of the conspiracy theory, thinking about who to blame. So then it can start spreading into hate and further distrust. And that can cause a lot of problems politically, with some populist leaders perhaps taking advantage of that fear or these concepts. Or we could see people who are on the far right pushing those individuals and further to the right and less into reality.
Well, Carmen, lots to think about. Thanks for giving us this window into helping us for the people who are like, what is he even talking about? This helps.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing your algorithm with us.
Thanks.
Okay, that's Carmen Celestini. She is a postdoctoral fellow with Simon Fraser University's Disinformation Project. Now, since that China trade deal, Prime Minister Mark Carney has further laid out his vision. Yesterday, he gave a speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, where he said the old order is not coming back. Adam Chapnick is a professor of defense studies at the Canadian Forces College in Toronto. Today, he's speaking for himself. He's also the author of the book Canada First, Not Canada Alone, A History of Canadian Foreign Policy. He joins us now. Adam, welcome to Blue Sky.
Thanks very much for having me.
So Mark Carney spoke of this being a turning point for Canada and the world. He said, quote, "There is a rapture in the world order, the end of a pleasant fiction and the dawn of a brutal reality in which great power geopolitics is unconstrained." For those who don't know, what was the world order before all of this?
So the world order, as the Prime Minister is describing it, is the system that came out of the Second World War. The worry among the victors of the Second World War was that if we had a Third World War, it would not go well. It could nuclearize. There'd be nobody left. So we had to create a system of checks and balances that would prevent a Third World War. The theory was that every country was going to be equal and that we were going to respect the sovereignty of every country. But there was an executive committee called the United Nations Security Council where 5 countries got special privileges. And they were able to veto or prevent anything that the international organization wanted to do. We then set up parallel economic bodies that were supposed to govern trade and bodies for refugees, hunger, and all the rest. Although we said that every country was equal, we knew that 5 were not equal: the United States, what was then the Soviet Union, China, Britain, and France. But those 5 countries behaved relatively humbly in terms of not flaunting their overwhelming power. And particularly the United States served as a backstop to keep the liberal democratic traditions of this system in check. So the Americans did not exert all the power they had because they believed that the system itself was better for everyone, including them. What the Prime Minister is saying is that there's no humility left amongst those with all the power, that they are bullying the way that they're capable of bullying. And as a result, the rest of us can't take our safety and security for granted anymore. And we have to do a lot more to protect our own interests.
Last year, Mark Carney called China the biggest threat to Canada's security, but now he talks about a new world order and says, we take the world as it is and not as we wish it to be. What do you make of that?
I think what the Prime Minister's saying there is something like what Prime Minister John Diefenbaker said back in the 1950s. John Diefenbaker hated communists, and we were on the non-communist, the capitalist side in the Cold War, but he still sold China and Cuba grain. He basically said, they can't kill us with a loaf of bread, and we can make good money by selling them wheat. I think what Mr. Carney is saying is that China's a 1.4 billion people. They have purchasing power that can help our industries. That said, we don't want them involved in AI with us. We don't want them involved in certain security issues with us. But that doesn't mean that they can't buy our peas and grain, and it doesn't mean that we can't sell them energy and a few other things. So he's saying we don't have the luxury of picking and choosing who we buy and sell with anymore. The world is not safe enough for that. We don't have a reliable backstop like we did before.
How have you seen President Trump challenge that world order in the first year of his second term in office?
Well, what the president has said is that he doesn't need international law. He doesn't really care about those systems, and the United States was going to do what the United States wanted to do. The United States has always been able to do whatever it wanted to do, but it had never flaunted the rules in quite that way. And when you flaunt the rules, you grant everyone else the freedom or the luxury of flaunting the rules as well, which makes the entire structure fall within itself. And that the big difference is that the lack of humility through America's approach, and to be honest, also in Russia's approach by attacking Ukraine. Every country was supposed to be independent and had the right to its territory. Russia blatantly attacked Ukraine, and now the U.S. president is saying that he can do whatever he wants in the world, no matter the rules.
What are some of the examples? I mean, I feel like there's quite a few examples, but what are some of the examples that stand out to you?
It's implementing tariffs on countries for no real reason. It breaks the international liberal trading orders rules. So we had rules on how you trade with other countries. You can't punish them for no reason aggressively. That was not supposed to be permitted in the way that the system worked. Threatening within NATO of not coming to the aid of another NATO country, or even threatening the sovereignty of a NATO country, isn't part of the rules of the NATO alliance. So there have been a number of instances
What are the NATO rules?
The NATO rules are that it's really all for one and one for all, kind of like the Three Musketeers. The idea is that within this alliance, first of all, we all come to one another's aid if under attack, and we would certainly never attack one of our own. So the idea that the United States reserved the right to use force to take Greenland completely undermines the idea of NATO as a collective defense alliance. I mean, theoretically, America would then also be obligated to come to Greenland's defense to defend Greenland against America's attack.
I want to go to the phone lines. We have a caller in Saskatoon. Loretta's on the line. Loretta, welcome to Blue Sky.
Hi.
What did you want to add to the conversation today?
Well, it's interesting that the headlines today talk about not only the Davos speech, but also the woman on the East Coast who's recovering from having experienced coercive control that led to the murders that occurred there. And the reason I bring this intersection up is that U.S. foreign policy is shaped and delivered by coercive control, and Canada needs to educate itself on coercive control. Mark Carney used the word economic coercion 3 times in his speech. And the reason we need to learn about this is because it's the same machinery, just on a national level. They're modeling intimate abuse at scale. So whether in a group, a relationship, or a nation, coercive control relies on narrative dominance, selective truth, punishment of dissent, and loyalty tests through silence being belonging and speech being betrayal. So the speech was a betrayal, and we saw the immediate pattern response from Trump this morning of saying, you should be grateful. Like an intimate partner abusive relationship, one of the first pushbacks is you should be grateful for X, Y, and Z. So we need to really understand the pattern and dynamics of coercive control, because we have a history in Canada of also utilizing it. As Carney said, putting the sign up in the window also is internal. We've used coercive control with First Nations people in establishing colonization. So we have a lot to learn about these patterns and how to protect each another and ourselves.
Loretta, thank you.
Thank you.
I want to go to the news headlines right away, but I do want to give you an opportunity to respond at all about that idea of likening a relationship to a physically abusive relationship or emotionally abusive relationship, and the use of economic coercion.
Well, I see some parallels. The speaker explained herself extremely well. I'm not entirely comfortable with that as an analogy, because I think that there are a number of instances for Canada when it is actually in our interests to keep our mouths shut and suck up some of the American rhetoric rather than pushing back every time. I think that what the Prime Minister has said, and I agree with him, is that when we push back, we must push back with our allies. That when we are in a one-on-one relationship with a great power or a superpower, we are every time inevitably in a bad position. That we have to pick our shots, and when we pick them, we need to do them with others who are of like mind and similar interests, and that is the only chance we have of being effective.
It's hard to do it on our own. Right now on Blue Sky, I'm joined by Adam Chapnick. He's one of the authors of the book Canada First, Not Canada Alone, A History of Canadian Foreign Policy. He's our guest, and we're discussing this new world order Canada finds itself in. So if you have thoughts on Canada's role in this new reality and the relationships we're forging with new countries, you can call 1-800-716-2221 or email bluesky@cbc.ca. Don't wait till the end of the show, folks. If you want to call now so that Adam has a chance to actually respond to what you want to say. We have a tendency to wait till the last minute, and then everybody's trying to call at the same time. So, Adam, what do you make of Trump's claims that the U.S. needs Greenland for Arctic security?
I think that the president's argument that Greenland is not sufficiently defended is not unreasonable. The Danes have admitted, the Greenlanders have admitted for years that they haven't necessarily done enough. The Danes are now saying they're going to do more. Greenland is going to do more. And America also has a military agreement with Denmark, and by implication with Greenland, that allows it to position more troops in Greenland as it is. So the argument that Greenland needs more defense is not unreasonable. The argument that the only way to do that is for America to take over Greenland is not reasonable, at least at this point. The first thing you would normally try is positioning more American troops there with things as they are. If that failed for some reason, then the president could come back and say, we tried to work within the treaties we already have and the agreements we already have. They're failing. We need to do something else. But it doesn't make a lot of sense not to try the easiest option that everyone is comfortable with, that is consistent with the rule of law, that is consistent with previous American agreements, which is just to position more troops in Greenland as is permitted by the agreements that are already there.
Help our listeners understand just what kind of military presence is in Greenland right now.
Right now, funny thing is there's actually a very limited American presence in Greenland. They used to have 13 or 14 bases because they didn't find the threat at that point to be all that threatening. They reduced it to one base. I believe there are 100 to 300 American troops positioned right there right now. The Danes are also increasing their presence in the region and have committed to increasing their spending on defense by something along the lines of a massive increase in their spending on defense. I don't want to mislead your listeners.
And how does Canada fit into that?
We're an Arctic nation. We're part of the North, and so we have an interest in the North being safe and secure as it is. We also have an interest in countries in the North and territories in the North having the right to their own sovereignty and freedom. That if the United States declares that Greenland isn't capable of defending itself, it could later declare that Canada isn't capable of defending itself. We're in the North too, and we have done a terrible job of spending on defense and security to defend and protect our territory. So we have two interests. We have interest in terms of we want the North to be safe, and we have an interest in wanting to retain our independence in the world.
Carney is considering sending soldiers to Greenland for military exercises with NATO. What do you make of that?
I think that given how provocative it is to put soldiers in Greenland right now, and given how much more vulnerable Canada is to American retaliation than the Europeans are, it would be wonderful for Canada if the Europeans were to say, we're not asking Canada to send troops right now. That, to me, if you got to send Canadian troops, that would be an additional escalation and an incremental escalation that you would do if you didn't get the right response from the positioning of European troops. The president did say now that he isn't going to use force to take Greenland. He just wants to buy it. So hopefully there won't be a need for Canada to further enrage the United States on this one. Again, I think we have to pick our slots, and I'm not sure that right now, given that the Europeans have already done the work, in military terms, we call it a tripwire. They don't think they could fight back against the Americans with the troops they've sent there. They just want to force the United States to know that they would have to shoot Europeans if they wanted to take Greenland over. So that tripwire is there. We aren't necessarily needed yet, and I'd rather that be saved.
As you said, President Trump says he won't use military force against a NATO ally, but he also said in the same speech, you can say yes and we'll be very appreciative, or you can say no and we will remember. So it's tricky, right? Because there could be two different messages coming out of the exact same speech, and who's to know which ones to take seriously. Trump has also threatened tariffs against countries that oppose the U.S. taking over Greenland. Can you help us explain a little bit more about what's going on there?
Yes, the American president believes, and it's somewhat, that there's some truth to it, but it's not entirely the way I believe that he sees it, that he can punish countries economically by imposing tariffs on them in order to force them to do what he wants them to do. It is true that if he puts a tariff on a country, it makes it more expensive for them to sell things into the United States, which makes them less competitive and can hurt their businesses. But it's also true that those tariffs punish Americans, because if the Americans now want to buy those products, they are the ones who pay the tariff. The European business doesn't pay the tariff. So tariffs in some ways are mutually assured destruction. They're just going to make everything more expensive for everyone. The American president gambles that the pain will be felt more in Europe before it is felt as significantly in America.
And why? I don't understand that reasoning.
Oh, so the argument is that the American economy is big enough that if cars from Europe get too expensive, for a while, people can just buy other cars and they'll be fine. And it'll be a little bit pricier, but there are 350 million Americans who can make up for whatever they lose from the access to Europe. Whereas each European country is significantly smaller, and the inability to sell into the American market will hurt them right away and will hurt them a lot more. So the thinking is, yeah, we may both get hurt, but you're going to hurt first and you're going to hurt bigger. And so you'll bend and do whatever I ask. And the American people will be resilient enough to withstand whatever costs that this policy imposes on them.
How are we seeing Europe respond to this threat of tariffs?
Europeans are upset this time, and they have announced that they're going to go back on the economic agreement that they made with the United States last year, and they are looking into retaliatory tariffs. When Europe acts as a collective, economically, they're actually quite powerful. The trade balance with the United States is about even. If Europe doesn't act as collective and individual European countries go their separate ways, then all of Europe becomes significantly weaker. So somehow the US president has actually managed to unite almost all of the European Union in unity over the idea that Greenland can't be taken over against its will. And they're all working together right now, which makes them significantly more powerful than they normally would be.
Do you see any cracks in there?
I think it's too soon, but they tend to come. It's some of the countries in the European Union suffer more from American tariffs than others would, and some will suffer more through the imposition of retaliatory tariffs than others will.
I mean, I just think of Canada as a country that we can't even all get on the same page, just with the different interests across the provinces. I imagine it's pretty tricky when you have a bunch of different countries.
Yeah, the European Union is famous for its inability to do much very quickly, because to get everybody on side takes forever. And then once everyone's on side, governments change and somebody's no longer on side. So they are famous for working extremely slowly and having trouble. But I think that Greenland, taking over Greenland seems to be a red line that they all agree should not be crossed, especially amongst allies, and most of whom are NATO partners. And NATO is the defense alliance that has kept the West together and secure for the last 80 years, 75 to 80 years.
How healthy would you say NATO is right now? Could it survive these threats?
I think it can survive the threats. I don't know if it could survive the threats being fulfilled.
Yeah.
That I would really risk the end of the alliance.
And then what?
Well, I think what the Prime Minister was saying is that we have to create whatever friend groups we can find that have mutual interests, whether that's around trade, whether that's around security, whether that's around defense, and do the best we can with those who are thinking similarly to us. Nobody wins in that situation, but you do what you can.
Were you watching Mark Carney's speech from Davos yesterday?
I was actually in class, so I've read it, I've listened to it, but I didn't see it live.
It's interesting. I have seen it shared so many times. There's not often that a prime minister's speech gets shared in full. What do you think about that speech kind of caught so many people's attention?
I think, as someone who studies this stuff regularly, I didn't find personally all that much in it to be new. It really, to me, described exactly what the Prime Minister has been doing for the last 6 to 8 months. But I think the key with Canadians writ large is we never pay attention to world affairs. And all of a sudden, the entire world was paying attention to our Prime Minister, which caused us to pay attention, which was revelatory in that he basically said it's not a nice world. It's ugly. We have to do things that don't feel good. And I don't think Canadians have heard a Prime Minister say that to them when they were listening for a very long time. It's been said, but Canadians hadn't been paying that kind of attention in the way that we have been for the last day or two.
I do want to play a clip from there. We have a clip from near the end of his speech.
Canada has what the world wants. We are an energy superpower. We hold vast reserves of critical minerals. We have the most educated population in the world. Our pension funds are amongst the world's largest and most sophisticated investors. In other words, we have capital, talent. We also have a government with immense fiscal capacity to act decisively. And we have the values to which many others aspire. Canada is a pluralistic society that works. Our public square is loud, diverse, and free. Canadians remain committed to sustainability. We are a stable and reliable partner in a world that is anything but. A partner that builds and values relationships for the long term. And we have something else. We have a recognition of what's happening and a determination to act accordingly. We understand that this rupture calls for more than adaptation. It calls for honesty about the world as it is. We are taking the sign out of the window. We know the old order is not coming back. We shouldn't mourn it. Nostalgia is not a strategy. But we believe that from the fracture, we can build something bigger, better, stronger, more just. This is the task of the middle powers. The countries that have the most to lose from a world of fortresses and the most to gain from genuine cooperation. The powerful have their power. But we have something too. The capacity to stop pretending, to name reality, to build our strength at home, and to act together. That is Canada's path. We choose it openly and confidently, and it is a path wide open to any country willing to take it with us.
Prime Minister Mark Carney's speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland yesterday. Adam, Trump's reaction today was that Carney was not grateful. And he said, speaking directly to, quote, Mark, Trump said, Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements. What do you think the fallout is from him using this platform in that way?
I've learned over 8 years ago and now over the last year, not to predict a fallout with the US president, because either he will continue to think about this and there could be practical consequences, or he will move on to something else. And because he has a good personal relationship with our prime minister, this will be water under the bridge. So I hesitate to predict at all. I think the prime minister was quite careful. He never mentioned the United States explicitly in that speech. He made reference to hegemons and great powers, but never drew deliberate attention. And the most critical things he said about the United States, he said in French, which prevents some of the American media from
secret language.
Yes, and to be honest, Chrystia Freeland did the same thing in 2017 when she gave a speech in the House of Commons about Canada's place in the world.
This makes me think of all those United Nations speeches and all the things I'm missing. What do you see? I mean, we've talked Canada is a middle power. What do you see as Canada's role in this new world order as a middle power?
I think what the Prime Minister is suggesting is that the middle folks, they are not as powerful as the great powers, but when working together, they can actually exert force and influence in the world. So combining Canada's economy with the economies of Europe, adding Australia, adding South Korea, when we put all of those countries together and have them working consistently towards the same goals, we can exert influence and affect change similarly, although not entirely equivalently, to the way that the most powerful countries can. So we're players. We're not major players, and we're certainly not players alone. But working together, we control some of our own fate. We're not simply to be walked all over by the more powerful.
If people are listening and they want to join that conversation, I'll give out those numbers. It's 1-800-716-2221, or you can email bluesky@cbc.ca. Adam, what would it take for Canada to get up to the levels of other G7 countries in terms of defense?
It will take a lot of sacrifice from the Canadian people, because either we're going to raise taxes dramatically or we're going to make overwhelming cuts to some of the social services that the federal government helps provide. We've neglected our spending on defense and security for decades. Just to get up to the 2% of our gross domestic product, which was an amount we agreed to get up to many times before in 2014 and 2017, has taken an overwhelming immediate spend that's come at the expense of other programs. And what the government has said is that we will spend 3.5% of our gross domestic product on defense and another 1.5% of our gross domestic product on defense and security related stuff. And we'll get there over the next 6 or 7 years. It's an overwhelming amount of money that has to be spent extremely quickly. We aren't good at spending quickly, and Canadians are not used to that amount of that quantity of money. I mean, we had a defense budget that could go from $60 billion to $150 billion. That kind of change Canadians haven't seen since the Korean War.
We have the new Defense Investment Agency, but is procurement a problem?
Yeah, so procurement is the idea that you know what you want to buy, but you have to create the processes to actually get the thing bought. We have had a lot of trouble with big procurements. We're actually not bad at little procurements, but buying big things, buying ships, buying planes, we haven't been as good at, partially because sometimes we want to buy the plane that will do the best job defending us. Sometimes we want to buy the plane that will create the most jobs in Canada. Sometimes we want to buy the plane that will make our allies happy. And sometimes those three things don't jive. And therefore, we change our minds in terms of what our priorities are. The other reason procurement has been hard in the past is that historically, when you cut defense, if you're trying to trim your defense budget, cutting the people who work on procurement is easier because the public doesn't see that and you don't feel it right away. You only feel it next time you want to try to buy big things.
And is there concern about buying big things from the countries that you're trying to defend yourself from?
There is a hope that throughout all that it continues, that in spite of all of this talk and all of the action on the world stage that has made us less stable, our military to military relations with the United States thus far have remained solid. And we have to hope that that is maintained because yes, it does become awkward buying a lot of your kit from a country where its leader has said at different times that it wants to make you the 51st state.
These are wild times. I mean, we just saw an image that Trump had shared in the White House of a picture with Greenland, Venezuela, and Canada as U.S. territory. I mean, at any other point, something like that would have been completely unheard of. Now it's just like another day. This is just another thing that happened. Just what do you make of this moment that we're in right now?
I think, especially with that sort of meme, what I make of it is that we have to learn not to react to every provocation. That there is no value in choosing to respond to everything as if it is the end of the world, especially if we're going to respond on our own. So I think that patience, reasoning, reasonableness, just because the rules of the world are not being followed as closely as they should be, doesn't mean that we should throw them out as well. You want to behave in a manner that is consistent with the world that you want to have, but you also want to be practical about what you're doing. And it takes a heck of a lot of patience and calmness, and it's going to take sacrifice. But to me, that calmness is critical to our resilience.
I want to go back to the phone lines. Kathy is on the line in Regina. Kathy, welcome to the show.
Hello. I heard a recent commentary on some other program on CBC recently where there was questioning, I believe it was one of the countries at least, maybe a couple in the EU, that are threatening about dealing with bond holdings of investments in United States dollars. And I've been mulling that over several different ways, and I don't really have much sense of what that really means. And I'm hoping your guest could speak a little bit more about that.
Adam, I don't know if that's your forte, but what are your thoughts?
It's a little bit outside of where I'm most comfortable, but my guess is the suggestion there is that Europeans who hold stock or bonds in the United States would all sell at the same time, which would create a panic and some sort of run on the American economy. It's mutually assured destruction. Again, when you do things like that, the economies are so intertwined that hurting the American economy in a way that creates a crisis will also hurt everyone that trades with the United States, and that certainly includes Europe. So yes, folks threaten extreme things when they feel under siege, but generally speaking, cooler heads prevail on these sorts of things. I don't think Europe's ultimate goal is to go tit for tat with the United States. Who can hurt who more? First of all, the Americans will probably win, but second of all, everyone will just hurt a lot, and the winners will be the Russians, and the second place finishers will be the Chinese.
Kathy, is that helpful?
Or to follow on that discussion, yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll go back to the phone lines where Gary is on the line in Broadview. Gary, what do you want to add to the conversation today?
Yeah, good afternoon. I just would like to put the, I guess, added coverage that's not been provided here. The leader of the Liberal Party was just recently, Mark Carney, in China. It's kind of interesting. None of the media made a point about his company and spider web of intricacies with other companies and organizations, how nobody's talking about that. He was just to China prior to the World Economic Forum. I wonder if anybody asked him if he checked on his loans with the Bank of China. And now he's reading a speech, and I listened to the part you had on here. Kind of interesting. It could have been read by the Premier of China, except that they maybe mislaid each other's speeches before they left for Davos. I personally don't trust Mr. Carney because he's trying to play both sides of the fence, but I think he's basically a covert agent for the Chinese. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's a hot take from Gary in Broadview. Adam, I mean, there's definitely people with different perspectives all across this country. What do you make of how Mark Carney has been representing Canada on this world stage?
I think that the Prime Minister, whose assets are in a blind trust and has no idea how his money is or isn't being invested right now, first of all, I think that he's doing what needs to be done. I think there are two things that are important. The first is when he became Prime Minister, he realized immediately that Canada basically had no friends left in the world, largely because we refused to spend on defense and security and relied on everyone else to do it for us. And as a result, one of the first things he said when he became Prime Minister, when he was elected, as opposed to when he assumed the Prime Minister's job, was that we were going to spend 2% on defense immediately. That opened doors for the Europeans and the South Koreans and the Australians to actually talk to us at all. So that was a huge step in the right direction. And now he has been on a tour of making friends, as many friends as possible, knowing that some friends are friends because we have common interests, and some friends are just friends because it's convenient. And with the Chinese, we have established some pretty serious guardrails in terms of what they're allowed to trade with us and what they can't trade with us. So I think that we are going in with our eyes reasonably open, in that, for example, the Chinese are not going to be able to invest in anything cyber related in this country. There's going to be no business with China in cyber. On the other hand, if they want to buy our peas and lentils, again, just like John Diefenbaker said, you couldn't kill us with a loaf of bread. You can't kill us with a pea soup. And if we can make money off that, that's
oil, for that matter.
Yeah, or canola oil. If they want to spend their money on those products, that's terrific. That helps grow our economy.
Adam, we're coming up to the end of the show, but I'm just curious because, I mean, you are a professor of defense studies. You are connected with a bunch of people I don't get to talk to on a regular basis. Just what, in your world right now, what is the thing that people are paying the most attention to?
I think that the most attention is to the unpredictability that's being caused by the fact that it's just not one problem. We have an environmental crisis going on. In Canada, we have a crisis in terms of housing. We have an economic situation that isn't ideal. Security is not stable anywhere in the world. It's the overwhelming overlap of all of these crises. It's in some ways, the crises are flooding the zone, to use a political strategy from the United States, and nobody knows really what you deal with first, because the moment you deal with one, it means you're ignoring another. And it's the overwhelming nature and the nonstop nature of the challenges facing us today that folks aren't used to, and that we're still grappling with what is the best defense for this sort of scaling of crises.
And what are you watching for in just the next couple of days? I mean, we got to see President Trump speak this morning. It seems like every day there's something completely different. But what are you watching for?
In this environment, I try not to look for something specific, because if I do, I'm going to miss something else, because it's just, the stuff is never ending. The Prime Minister's next step, I believe, is to try to improve relations with India. So I'll be looking to see how that goes, and if he can have a reasonably successful visit there, that would be helpful. That's another economy with 1.4 billion people who can buy our goods and services, although there are challenges, of course, with that relationship too. But in this world, you have no choice. You deal with everyone. So I'll be looking at that. I will be looking to see if the U.S. president continues to remember what the prime minister said at Davos, or whether he moves on to other things. Sometimes with Premier Doug Ford's ad, he liked it the first day and then he didn't like it after that. But in other cases, he's liked things and then moved on from them. So I looking to see what is on at the front of his to-do list in the future.
Adam, we'll have to get you back.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
That was Adam Chapnick. He's a professor of defense studies at the Canadian Forces College in Toronto, but he was speaking on his own today, not on behalf of that organization.